Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max. සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
අර පිරිමැස්ම ගැන හිතන ඔබට Vim Liquid වෙතින් රුපියල් 100ක ඉතිරියක්.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Sunday, the 8th of January 2023. Resumption. The third round of negotiations on the Thai-Lanka FTA to begin in Colombo. Power generation. 7th 60,000 metric ton coal shipment reaches Sri Lanka. 2 more shipments expected to arrive tomorrow and on the 15th, says Lanka Coal. Inclusive growth. Strong institutions are the foundation for a sustainable and steady growth, says Central Bank Governor.
In terms of social indicators, Sri Lanka was kind of an outlier, basically better side. But if you look at last 2 years' data, you can see this complete turnaround. It highlights the lack of strong institutions.
Growth potential. Sri Lanka's gem and jewellery industry can easily earn $1 billion in revenue, says Industries Minister.
Ministry and also at the Gem and Jewellery Authority, so the other private sector organizations should work together to enhance the industry to uplift to the next level of it.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Indivadi Amuwata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening. Joining you tonight, we take you straight to your top stories. The third round of negotiations between Sri Lanka and Thailand on the free trade agreement will commence tomorrow in Colombo with the participation of 26 official delegates from Thailand. The National Trade Negotiations Committee, headed by Chief Negotiator of Free Trade Agreements KJ Veerasinghe, will present Sri Lanka and represent Sri Lanka during the deliberations. According to the President's Media Division, government plans to put this agreement into effect in the first quarter of year 2024. The negotiations will focus on areas such as trade in goods and services, trade facilitation, economic cooperation and investment.
A delegation led by Director General of the Department of Trade Negotiations of Thailand, Oraman Suptavitum, arrived in Sri Lanka to resume the postponed discussions on the proposed Sri Lanka-Thailand Free Trade Agreement. According to the President's Media Division, the third round of negotiations on the proposed FTA will begin tomorrow and will be held until the 10th of January in Colombo. 7 topics including trade in goods, trade in services, investments, rules of origin, custom cooperation, trade facilitation, and economic cooperation will be the focus of the negotiations. The National Trade Negotiating Committee, whose members primarily represent the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Trade, Commerce and Food Security, the Department of Trade and Investment Policy of the Treasury, and the Department of Commerce, will participate in the negotiations on behalf of Sri Lanka under the leadership of Sri Lanka's Chief Negotiator of Free Trade Agreements, KJ Veerasinghe. They are expected to present the specific requests made by regional business associations and chambers and consider them during the negotiations. The government plans to put this agreement into operation in the first quarter of 2024. The PMD further said the government's objective of entering the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which represents 30% of the global population and economy, will be advanced by this agreement. In 2021, Sri Lanka imported goods from Thailand worth $355 million and exported to Thailand goods worth some $59 million.
Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe says strong institutions are the foundation for a sustainable, inclusive and steady growth for a long period. Speaking during a panel discussion on the topics South Asia's Path to Resilient Growth, organised by the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe said Sri Lanka moved backwards in all its social indicators due to the lack of strong institutions in the country.
How does a country like Sri Lanka avoid getting trapped in this geoeconomic fragmentation? And is there a risk that you have to start choosing sides? How do you avoid that?
As a small country, I think in my view, we are the worst affected through fragmentation. I can just start from both sides, externally and also internally. That's the two parts. Externally, one example I can cite is that sanctions on Iran by the US. We had the only refinery in Sri Lanka that could use running crude oil. With the sanctions, we had to stop operations and the cost of energy went up as a small country. But we also understand the bigger, strong economies like even India and South Europe continue to trade with Iran and use petroleum. Whereas we worst affected all these small countries like us because we can't do trade settlements because of that. Even now, Russia and Ukraine war, if you look at who has been worst affected, obviously we know India, China, some of the European countries still import petroleum from Russia, whereas we can't, and as a result, we are paying higher price for petroleum. In our view, country like ours is basically affecting more in terms of fragmentation than the bigger, stronger economies. It's not only that, in terms of internal policies. If you look at Sri Lanka in terms of trade integration, Sri Lanka is one of the first countries in Asia that opened up in 1977. And we integrated in terms of trade with the region and the world at the beginning for several decades, and then we moved back as a result of internal policies and basically, nationalistic protection policy. We moved back from the open small economy into a more protectionist closed economy. That's where we have been suffering. One of the reasons why we are in the crisis. That's inconsistent internal policies and moving back and forth.
From your perspective, how do you see, given the current conjuncture where we are right now, the challenges the monetary policy framework faces, the challenge for institutions, both from a near-term perspective and from a longer-term perspective in anchoring strong and inclusive growth?
This is up to, I think, 2020-19 data. All the indicators in terms of social indicators, in terms of poverty, in terms of health, education, per capita incomes, living standards. The charts earlier, Sri Lanka was kind of outlier, basically better side. But if you look at last 2 years' data, you can see this complete turnaround. And it highlights the lack of strong institutions and some of the missteps that basically turn around the decades of good work and move the country back into several decades. Key one is the fiscal imbalances that has been growing several decades and no one basically. So this is one of the reasons why the Sri Lanka's experience, we have gone to the IMF 16 times, this is the 17th time. If you look at the earlier IMF program, last 10 programs, and look at the objectives, same objectives, revenue-based fiscal consolidation and high debt and some payment issues. So we have been going back and forth, and the reason why always with the program we go in the 2 steps forward and take again 1 step backwards, so there's no progress. It's mainly because of this important topic of the strong fiscal rules, the independent central bank, independent regulatory institutions, strong public service, independent public service, the politicizing the all government operations. Those are the reasons. And as long as these were basically in a way that one of the reasons why large fiscal deficit is moving into large debt, and as long as we had access to markets, we continue to go in this direction. The negative in terms of trade openness, we moved backwards, and then we borrowed and lived for long years, and a small mistake and lack of strong institutions that triggered this thing, and we moved back decades back into this thing. I think this is where what is important is now only we are learning that strong institutions is the foundation for a sustainable, inclusive, steady growth for long periods without going into a debt crisis.
Unit 1 of the Norochole coal power plant that was connected to the national grid following the completion of its maintenance work is once again hampered due to a breakdown. According to Ceylon Electricity Board, steps are being taken to fix the breakdown, which they say is minor.
On 23rd of December, Unit 1 of the Norochole power plant was shut down by the Ceylon Electricity Board, citing maintenance work and a shortage of coal stocks. However, the CEB recently said the shutdown generation unit can resume operations at full capacity with the completion of maintenance work and the arrival of required coal stocks. Accordingly, Unit 1, which remained out of order for over 3 weeks, resumed operations today. However, the CEB had to hold operations once again after upon relaunch due to a steam leak in the valves, which is said to be a minor breakdown. Speaking to AdaDerana, a CEB spokesperson said, adding that more details on the resumption of operations will be announced tomorrow. Once Unit 1 comes into operation, Norochole will operate at full capacity together with its 2 other units. Now, the 7th shipment of 60,000 metric tons of consignment of the
33 shipments essential for the Norochole power plant to generate power between September 2022 and April this year reached Sri Lankan shores yesterday. According to Lanka Coal Company Private Limited, 2 more shipments of coal are expected to arrive at the Puttalam anchorage tomorrow and again on the 15th of this month.
Another coal shipment that is essential for power generation at the Norochole coal power plant arrived at the Puttalam anchorage yesterday. 60,000 metric tons on board. This is the 7th vessel procured by the Lanka Coal Company to the Ceylon Electricity Board out of the 33 60,000 metric ton shipments that are essential for coal power generation between September 2022 and April this year. The 6th vessel meanwhile arrived on Friday with another 60,000 metric ton coal stock, and according to the Ceylon Electricity Board, 31,830 metric tons have been discharged at anchorage for power generation. According to Lanka Coal Company Private Limited, 2 more vessels, which will be the 8th and 9th shipments with 60,000 metric tons of coal in each, are expected to reach the Puttalam anchorage tomorrow and on 15th of January respectively. Last month, the state coal supplier assured that there will not be power cuts in the country due to coal unavailability, assuring of a smooth supply of coal.
Renovations of the 128-kilometre-long Mahava-Omanthe stretch of the Northern Railway line commenced in Madavachia today. Funded by India's state-run Indian Railway Construction International, it is estimated that it would take at least 5 months to complete the renovations. During that period, trains from Colombo running in the Northern Railway line will stop at the Mahava railway station.
Renovations of the Mahava-Omanthe stretch of the Northern Railway line commenced in Madavache today under the patronage of Minister of Transport Dr. Bandula Gunawardena and Indian High Commissioner in Colombo Gopal Bagle. The tracks of the railway line from Mahava to Omanthe are upgraded by India's state-run Indian Railway Construction International under an Indian credit line of 33 billion rupees. According to the Department of Railways, it is estimated that it would take at least 5 months to complete the renovations. Thereby, trains on the Northern Railway line will end at the Mahava railway station until the completion of the upgrading of the tracks. Further, trains will not be up and running on the Anuradhapura-Vavuniya stretch of the Northern Railway line during this period.
අපි මේ දුම්රිය මාර්ගයේ පසුගිය 5 වෙනිදා වසා දනු ලැබුවා. මේ සමාගම ප්‍රතිඥාවක් දීලා තියෙනවා මාස 5ක කාලයක් තුලදී නැවත වතාවක් ඉතාම කාර්යක්ෂම පුරුල් සංවර්ධනයකට භාජනය වෙච්ච දුම්රිය මාර්ගයේ ජනතා අයිතියට පවරා දෙන බව ඔවුන් පොරොන්දු වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා මාස 5ක් දුෂ්කරතාවයේ වින්දා එතෙක් අනුරාධපුරයේ සිට මහව දක්වා පුද්ගලික හා මධ්‍යම ගමනාගමන මණ්ඩලයේ බස්වලට මගින් ජනතාවට පහසුව ලබා දෙන්නත් අපි කටයුතු කරලා තිබෙනවා. ලබා දෙනවා ඇති කියලා මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Well, it's time to take a short break. Coming up next, SLPP to contest with the United National Party for several local government bodies. Details on the other side.
It's hard to keep up with the new when you're listening to the same old Slim Bread Week, a week for professionals.
Welcome back to the news. Commissioner General of the Election Commission, Saman Sri Ratnayaka, says the Commission will continue their work on the local government elections until a court determination is delivered. Meanwhile, State Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government, Janaka Vakumara, said that they will contest the United National Party for several local government bodies, including the Colombo Municipal Council.
Since the beginning of the acceptance of election deposits for the local government election on 4th of January, 2 political parties including Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna and 5 independent groups have presented their deposit in order to contest for 23 local government bodies in districts of Colombo, Kaluthara, Kandy and Badulla. Accepting of election deposits will continue until 12 noon on the 20th of January.
ඒක අපිට අදාළ කාරණාවක් නෑ මොකද අපි පිට තියෙන්නේ ಭಾರತයේ තියෙන නීති අනුව ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න. නීතියේ යම්කිසි ආකාරයක නියමයක් කරන තෙක් අපි අපේ කටයුතු කරගෙන යනවා. සමහරව කියනවා බිලියන 10කට වඩා වැඩි වෙයි කියලා අපි පවත්නා මිල ගණන් තත්ත්වයන්ට අපි ඇස්තමේන්තු කරා. ඒ අනුව අපිට බිලියන 10ක මුදල් ප්‍රමාණය ඇති වෙයි කියන ප්‍රමාණය තියෙනවා. ගියවර බිලියන 8ක් කියපු වියදම තමයි COVID-19 තත්ත්වයක් තුල අපි බිලියන 5.8කින් අවසන් කරගත්තා.
Meanwhile, signatures were obtained for nominations of those who are contesting the local government election from Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna in the districts of Ratnapura, Hambantota, Matale and Ampara.
අපි මැතිවරණයට සූදානම් මේ පළාත් පාලන මැතිවරණයේදී ජනතාව නිවැරදි ජයග්‍රාහී තීන්දුව ගන්න බව අපිට තේරෙනවා.
දැන් කොළඹ මහනගර සභාව ගත්තොත් සමහර විට එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයෙන් අපේ අයත් තරඟ කරයි. එහෙම තැන් වලට ඒ විදිහට අපි කටයුතු කරනවා.
හිතන තරම් ලොකු ගැටලුවක් නැහැ. යම් කිසි ඡන්ද ප්‍රමාණයක් අඩු වෙයි ඉතින් නැහැ කියන්නේ. විද්‍යාන පෙරමුණේ ලකුණ ගැන පොඩි ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා යම් අයගේ. නමුත් එහෙම අවසානයේදී මැතිවරණේ තියෙනකොට ඒ අය ඡන්දේ පාවිච්චි කරේ අපේ පැත්තට.
Well, Canada has provided $3 million to help address the needs of the most vulnerable communities in Sri Lanka. This contribution comes in response to the humanitarian appeals launched by the United Nations and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. In a statement, the Canadian High Commission in Colombo said it is expected to help address needs of the most vulnerable communities in the island. It will be delivered through the UN and the IFRC in collaboration with their local partners to support the provision of emergency food assistance, health and nutrition services, access to safe water and other essential services to those who need it the most. In addition, Canada has provided ongoing international assistance projects to address immediate needs and help respond to the economic crisis in Sri Lanka, including the procurement of essential medical equipment and supplies. Taking you to our business news segment, Minister of Industries Dr. Ramesh Pathirana says he believes that Sri Lanka's gem and jewellery industry, which is currently earning around $500 million, has the potential of reaching $1 billion in revenue within a short period of time. Speaking at the Facets Sri Lanka Gem and Jewellery exhibition, the industries minister said both the government and the private sector should work together in order to uplift the industry.
Facets Sri Lanka Gem and Jewellery Exhibition, organised by the Sri Lanka Gems and Jewellery Association in collaboration with the National Gem and Jewellery Authority and the Export Development Board, was held recently in Colombo under the patronage of Minister of Industries Dr. Ramesh Pathirana.
We are sending the message across to the whole world. Sri Lanka is ready to open up its business. Let us work together as the ministry and also at the Gem and Jewellery Authority. Also the other private sector organizations should work together to enhance the industry to uplift to the next level of it. Despite the difficulties, the gem and jewellery industry in their small manner accumulated little more money than yesteryears. This year, to be exact, we received about 200 million. Last year, rather in 2022, we have received $200 million from exports of gem and jewellery. From the diamond exports, we got another 200 million, so roughly it has come to about $500 million. We honestly believe the gem industry of Sri Lanka has the potential to reach $1 billion target within a very short period of time. We should have more collaboration between the government and the private sector. At a time of economic calamity of this nature, so the three words we utter now very frequently are more important. That is globalization, liberalization and privatization. So your business, it's a global one. You know, there are a lot of people who bring in stones from the other countries and do value addition in Sri Lanka and re-export, which we should encourage. You know, so Sri Lankan mining industry, value addition has also come to a very high standard. We have a history of more than 1,000 years in this country for the value addition of gemstones in Sri Lanka. And also, it's more or less, it's a privately owned business, which we should encourage. We'll give you whatever the support that you may require in relation to uplift the Sri Lankan gem and jewellery industry in this year and time to come.
An International Monetary Fund delegation to meet Pakistan Finance Minister Ishaq Dar on the sidelines of a conference in Geneva as Pakistan struggles to restart its bailout program. The IMF is yet to approve the release of $1.1 billion originally due to be disbursed in November last year, leaving Pakistan with only enough foreign exchange reserves to cover 1 month's imports. The conference in Geneva, co-hosted by Sharif and the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, will look to gather international support for the country in the aftermath of devastating floods last year. A plan laying out a timeline and a financing of rebuilding efforts has been a sticking point in talks to clear the 9th review that will release the IMF funds and unlock other international funding to Pakistan as well. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.